Welcome to your astrological forecast for the week of Monday, November 18th through Sunday, November 24th, 2024. Can I just say I love the image that I used for the thumbnail for this video? It's showing these two centaurs, I don't know, fighting, as centaurs do. Centaurs, they were notorious for being belligerent. They were, they would drink tons of wine in the woods and have parties or whatever. Very kind of reminiscent of Sagittarius, is it not? So I thought that would be a fitting image to use, since, as you have heard, we are entering Sagittarius season this week with the sun finally leaving Scorpio. The other inner planets like Mercury and Venus are way ahead. I mean, Venus has been in Capricorn for over a week now. Mercury's well into Sagittarius. Really, it's just the sun kind of lingering behind in comparison. So finally, the sun will join Mercury and enter Sagittarius. And yeah, I think it's kind of weird when you consider, how often, my belief as a Western tropical astrologer, I believe that the seasons are connected to the signs. The signs are not actually directly connected to the constellations, they're directed to the seasons. That's my personal belief. And with Sagittarius, it can be odd. Why would a fire sign occur at such a cold time of year in the northern hemisphere, right? Sagittarius is so hopeful and so optimistic, and yet this is the darkest time of the year. How does that work? And really, it's all about abundance and prosperity, but why? And the answer, I'll give you kind of like a crude story. Basically, obviously, summer is clearly that's the more prosperous time where there's the warmth and all of that. But harvest time is more, early fall, roughly, depending on what you're harvesting and what latitude you're at and other things like that. But generally speaking, Libra kind of represents that harvest season, right? At the beginning of fall. That's another very pleasurable time. Scorpio, after Libra and before Sagittarius, Scorpio is more about conserving things, bottling and, jarring and canning, preparing for winter, essentially, preparing for what is to come. That's why Scorpio is all, very strategic and all of that. Also has to do with money and shared resources, yada yada. Once you get to Sagittarius, you get to a point where you either have to, whatever you can't preserve and salt and jar, historically, traditionally, it's you have to use it, and that's why there's these feasts that historically take place at this time of year. We still have in the United States anyway, we have Thanksgiving, which falls under Sagittarius season. And technically Christmas is a Capricornian holiday, but the entire build up before Christmas loosely corresponds to Sagittarius season as well. So Sagittarius really, it's that like a jolly kind of energy. It's that I really think it's the most optimistic sign. What else can I say about Sagittarius? I personally love the dynamism. In a way, I love comparing Sagittarius to Scorpio because at first glance they have little to nothing in common, right? What we just experienced about a month of sun in Scorpio, and Scorpio is such a heavy, emotionally intense sign and very pessimistic. Sagittarius is, Scorpio may be the most pessimistic sign, maybe Capricorn, I don't know. Scorpio is definitely up there. And Sagittarius is one of, probably the most optimistic sign. So huge difference there. One commonality, though, is that both Scorpio and Sagittarius are extreme and they're very passionate. If they're going to do something, they're going to do it all the way. They're going to do it 110% or 1,000% or whatever. They're going to go, they're going to push the boundaries. They don't like boundaries, and so, yeah, Sagittarius, it kind of does it all. And that's another commonality with Scorpio. These are both passionate and I would say emotional signs, but they're both very intellectual as well. So there's, we're kind of carrying over certain themes. Sagittarius is sometimes tricky for me to talk about as an astrologer, because by its very nature, it's so broad. It's almost like, the laws of karma are slightly loosened when we have these Sagittarian transits, because ultimately Sagittarius is about whatever it takes to broaden your consciousness, whatever it takes to broaden your heart, mind, and soul, That's what Sagittarius is about. So it's not specifically about any one thing. That's why, you can look to people that have a lot of Sagittarius natal placements. They can really just roll with the punches, let the chips fall where they may. They can handle it. It's about the adventure. Life is about the journey, not the destination. That's what Sagittarius is all about. And that's why, Sagittarius is often said to correlate to long distance travel. That's probably the most obvious way to expand your heart, mind, and soul, through experiencing other cultures. But you can do that through a variety of things, through new physical experiences, new foods, new information as well. So that's why Sagittarius has to do with all of these concepts. So yeah, it's a lot of things. I hope I kind of illustrated at least some basic components of Sagittarius. But yeah, we're concluding Scorpio, entering Sagittarius. What else is going on this week? So this week we will experience Moon transiting from very late Gemini all the way to Virgo. We will get a third quarter Moon that'll kind of disrupt things a little bit. I'll talk about that in just a moment. And at least at the beginning of the week, I think we are recovering from the full moon of last week. In case you missed it, there was a full moon that happened on Friday, November 15th in Taurus, and it was conjunct Uranus, which is a pretty big deal. We haven't had any major kind of lunar events that were dead on, conjunct or opposite an aspect like that, at least that I can remember, unless I'm forgetting one. So I do think that was a pretty wild full moon. And yeah, so as we start out the week, Sun is still opposing Uranus. You can see that here. This is the chart for Tuesday, November 19th, 2024. You can see Sun is still only a couple degrees away from that exact opposition with Uranus. So basically for the end of last week and kind of bleeding into this week as well, there may be a lot of epiphanies. I would challenge you, if you can't think, if something does immediately come to your mind for a recent epiphany that you've just had, I would challenge that. I feel like most, if not all of us, especially if you're listening to this, you've probably had some kind of new idea. You're looking at something from a different perspective. And again, that would be just since around last Friday. But my point is that's going to continue into the first couple days of this week, Monday, Tuesday. There may be new ideas, new perceptions changing. It's not usually the outside environment that's actually changing first. It's usually our perception that's changing with these kind of Uranian aspects. So that's going on. I also want you to take note of Mercury. Mercury's in its pre-shadow. I think it's easy for us to miss this. But next week, Mercury will actually station retrograde. So I always say, I think people get confused about what is Mercury pre-shadow. It's not just an extension of Mercury retrograde. Basically what's happening now, because we're so close to Mercury turning retrograde, Mercury's slowing down quite a bit. It's going to be pretty much stationary by the time we get to the end of the week. So basically, Mercury, as you probably know, Mercury has to do with information, communication, learning. It also has to do with the rhythm of, busyness and errands and things like that. Anything involving a lot of details and analysis. So all of that, everything I just rambled off there, all of that is slowing down and intensifying. The slower planets move, the more intense their themes become. So, yeah, I would say pay attention to, information, communication. These things may be intensifying. Okay, they're taking a different direction. This is going to be really wild because Mercury will be retrograde and it's in detriment in Sagittarius as well. So we may become privy to some very unique or kind of, just information that's completely different than what we would usually be exposed to. That might be uncomfortable, but it might also be very fascinating, very interesting. It's going to really broaden our minds and hearts and souls, like I was talking about, in the intro. So yeah, and usually before Mercury turns retrograde, it means that there's so much going on right now. We haven't really integrated all of it. Life can be hectic, even if, wherever you're at in life, there's a lot that we're constantly integrating. And sometimes, we don't integrate all of it in real time. Sometimes there's a lag time, and that's okay. That's what Mercury retrograde is all about. Like it or not, we do have an opportunity coming up to get a more thorough understanding of our lives. But it's a process. Mercury is not consistent. at all. you know, I talked about that in a video I just did recently on the planets, but yeah, Mercury it'll be fast, it'll be slow, it's going forward. It retrogrades more frequently than any other planet. So yeah, the information, the communication, our learning, our integrating things is not consistent, and that's okay. It does make things it makes things a little bumpy. Um, I think it's especially difficult because our calendars, our schedules are not built around astrology at all, and that's why we get this dysfunction, because we can't rest. We can't have a period where we just look within and integrate. At least many of us don't have that luxury. Um, Ideally that's what we would do during Mercury retrograde periods, or at least like, just the first few days of a Mercury retrograde at the very least would be great, just to like unwind and I don't know, go for a hike or something. But yeah, so if you do have, I mean, we're not quite there yet, but once we get closer to Mercury, stationing retrograde, just keep that in mind. If you can slow down a little bit and just allow your mind to unwind, whatever relaxes you, any kind of like meditation, walking, etc. I feel like people hate this lecture. I know I should really take my own advice. I really do though. These things are so important for integrating. Um, yeah, okay, let's run through a couple charts here. So, the first chart is, I haven't even mentioned, this is maybe actually the biggest news, and I haven't even mentioned it yet. Shame on me. Tuesday, November 19th, Pluto moves into Aquarius. And I know, as usual with these outer planets, there's been a bit of back and forth. I think it's like, honestly, I haven't even counted. I think it's like the third time Pluto's entered Aquarius. Yeah, I want to say third time. Correct me if I'm wrong. So the outer planets do this. Pluto actually spends about 50% of the time retrograde. It's kind of ridiculous, and that's why Pluto's intense all the time, because it's pretty much stationary all the time. But my point is, Pluto has entered Aquarius, retrograded back into Capricorn, entered Aquarius again. I think it retrograded back into Capricorn. Now, this is the real deal, though. Pluto's not fucking around with, all this like retrograde bullshit anymore. Pluto's entering Aquarius, and it's going to stay there for the next 20 years until 2044. So this is exciting. At least I personally think it's exciting. Pluto has spent the better part of, I don't know, 15 years in Capricorn, ever since I believe it was November 2008. It's been rough. I mean, the world economy has been not super great in that entire period, you know what I mean? And I think, most astrologers could predict that pretty easily. The more you put outer planets in yin signs, especially such a constrictive sign like Capricorn, the more there's less growth, things become constricted, right? So with Pluto entering Aquarius, we're really entering a much more Aquarian age. You're really going to see this halfway through next year, and I know those of you that listen to me, you've probably already heard this, but the outer planets are really going to shake things up next, like May, June-ish, like halfway through next year. So yeah, we are preparing to enter age of Aquarius, and Pluto entering Aquarius is a huge part of that. So yeah, we are entering a new era. Aquarius is still ruled by Saturn. It is reminiscent of Capricorn. There's a lot in common, but Aquarius is a yang sign. It's a little bit, well, I think it's much lighter than Capricorn. There's more room for spontaneity, for activity. It's really interesting because I want to say Pluto, I should really look up these dates, but I believe last time Pluto was in Aquarius, I want to say Trump was president, and then now Pluto is entering Aquarius again, and then Trump is going to be president again. So kind of a weird side note. If you think back to like, I don't know, 2020, there's so much spontaneity. I think 2019 as well, like before COVID. There's just so much activity going on. We're going to see more general activity, more like wildness, for better and for worse. Aquarius is just unpredictable, so things will become more unpredictable. I know that sounds awful, but I would prefer that over the heavy constrictive energy. That's what we've been experiencing for 15 years, for the better part of 15 years. It's just, I don't know. There's nothing wrong with Capricorn. I'm not bashing people that have Capricorn placements. They know what I'm saying to be true more than anybody. They're dealing with such heavy energy all the time. So, you know, Pluto kind of destroys whatever the themes are of the sign that it's in. Pluto destroys those things. So Capricorn has to do with society, the government, the economy. So we've seen the corruption in all of those things. Think back to 2008. How naive were we? So many of us still believed. I think we were a little bit naive to much of the corruption of our political and economic systems, right? So it's very hard to become aware of those truths, but that's what Pluto does. Pluto destroys whatever's not working, whatever's not true. It'll show you these things, right? I'll give one more example. So from 1995 to 2008, Pluto was in Sagittarius, and Sagittarius has to do with, among other things, Sagittarius has to do with religion, right? The church. And so that's where we saw much of the corruption with the church and, churches in general. And church attendance dropped dramatically during that period as well. So now the reason why I'm giving you these examples is because we can apply the same kind of thinking to Pluto entering Aquarius. Aquarius has to do with multiple different things, just like any sign. Aquarius has to do with like groups, right? Groups, clubs, societies, unions. I don't know. Aquarius also has to do with like technology, especially technology that has to do with the air. So like radio, for example, or like space flight, moving through the air, radio waves, whatever, things like that. So I predicted this a long time ago, but I've predicted that with Pluto entering Aquarius, some people think things will become much more technological. I'm predicting the opposite. I'm predicting that a lot of technology may become unreliable, electrical blackouts, or there's a lot of talk about a potential, I forget the term, I'm not an expert in this area, but next year there could be like widespread internet blackouts, things like that. I'm not trying to like spread fear or anything like that. I'm not afraid at all. If you can't tell by my tone, I'm not afraid, but I do think some of these technological things, we may see the corruption over the next 20 years. Like we may be naive right now with the effects of technology and things like that. And so it's not just about technology becoming less reliable. It's also about us seeing the current corruption in that area as well, and corruption with like groups, clubs, things like that too. So anyway, that's like a short kind of rendition of I don't know if I'm using that word right. So my short version of what I would expect from Pluto entering Aquarius. Big stuff. Pluto moves slower than any other planet. We call Pluto a planet here. We call the sun and moon planets. Pluto moves so slow. It's very rare that it enters a sign, and it's slowing down too, by the way. It'll spend 20 years in Aquarius, and it's going to spend much longer than that in Pisces after 2044. Anyway, but let's talk about this week. So Thursday, November 21st, Sun enters Sagittarius. Happy birthday, Sagittariuses. This is your time to shine. It's kind of interesting too, as the Sun enters Sagittarius, it sextiles Pluto. Pluto just entered Aquarius, so it's at 0 degrees and 2 minutes of Aquarius. And so, I don't know, afternoon Eastern Standard Time, Sun will reach 0 degrees Sagittarius, where it makes that exact sextile to Pluto. So that, I don't know, it's kind of just interesting. They changed signs so close together. They're both entering these kind of wild but also intellectual signs of Aquarius and Sagittarius, respectively, I guess. So yeah, a lot of intellectual energy, right? Yeah, Pluto, Venus, Pluto, Mercury, Sun, all in intellectual signs at least. Jupiter as well. Decent amount of fire. Mars, Mercury, Sun, all in fire signs. Moon in Leo as well, another fire sign. So yeah, we have a little bit more warmth, a little bit more spontaneity on Thursday, generally speaking. And yeah, entering Sagittarius season, which I think I covered. Let's talk about Friday, November 22nd. Although there was bigger news multiple days before Friday, November 22nd, I do think Friday is going to be the most volatile day. It's going to be the day that you feel the most. And that's because of a third quarter moon that will happen at 1 degree Virgo. This is going to happen pretty late in the day, Eastern Standard Time, with Sun at 1 degree Sagittarius, Moon at 1 degree Virgo. So it's a third quarter square. Third quarter moons tend to be kind of philosophical in nature. They tend to be a crisis in consciousness. It's been called. I didn't make that up. Someone else did. I don't know who. I'm sorry. But this one in particular, though, because Sun is in Sagittarius, being squared by Moon in Virgo, these are both very intellectual signs, especially Virgo, as I'm sure you know. So yeah, it's there's gonna be a lot of frenetic energy. I always use that word when there's a square between two mutable signs. Within each individual mutable sign, there's so much going on, right? Like the moon's in Virgo, so let's talk about Virgo. Virgo is doing so much. It can be this, it can be that. Virgo is a lot more adaptable than I think many people realize, and so just having moon in Virgo on its own would already be a lot. It would already be scattered, very detailed, nuanced, complex. But we're combining that with Sun in Sagittarius, which is also very scattered, very versatile, very complex. Sagittarius is very detached and intellectual, but also very passionate and emotional. It's all over the place. So combining two different mutable placements, especially when they're squaring each other like this, very complicated, very confusing, very scattered, very frenetic, as I say. We're just kind of all over the place, but especially mentally with this. Although it may be chaotic, this may be a great time for making some kind of adjustment, especially a mental adjustment. Could be physical too. It could be something in your environment or something with your life. I definitely think that will be a part of it for many people. But I think even more commonly than that, it's going to be a change. We need to make some kind of change with our perception. I think this is even more true when you consider that Mercury is pretty much stationary. So we're preparing on a little bit more of a long-term perspective. We're preparing to make a big shift in that kind of department, I guess you could say. But there's a more kind of like a small explosion on Friday that's really telling us to wake up, maybe approach things in a different way, mentally speaking, or maybe make some kind of lifestyle change. Something like that. I would really encourage you to think about these types of things. And if you do think about these things and you say, nope, there's really just no need for any change, you go through Friday and you don't, there's no change that needs to be made. In that case, I would encourage you to do something where you can release energy. That's really great for quarter moons. Quarter moons are so volatile, so energetic. I always say children and pets are bouncing off the walls during quarter moons. It happens every time. We go through this every 2 weeks. I would say, adults too, for anybody, either do something physical in nature, whatever you do that's physical, something, I hope, jogging, walking, exercising, something, anything. Or with this one in particular, though, it could be mental, I guess. I think a combination of both would be the best. I don't know what that would even entail. But it's something where you can release energy. So this is an aspect that requires action. That's kind of the bottom line. It's all about change, action, activity, etc. And that's pretty much what I have for you. Next week, Mercury stations retrograde, like I said, so that's going to be a big change. Definitely need to go over that. And we have a new moon, so lots of activity going on in Sagittarius. I hope you have a great week. If you're interested, please get a reading. It's what allows me to support kind of the channel. It's what supports me and allows me to post videos. And otherwise, have a great week, and I'll see you next time.